Welcome to the Birding for Joy podcast, a show about discovering and exploring all the ways birding and wild birds bring joy into our lives. Throughout Season 4, we'll be focusing our attention on simple actions we can take in our daily lives to help birds and nature. I'm Candi Lynn Fite, your gracious host and joyful birder. If you're curious about learning how you too can live a bird-friendly lifestyle, grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Greetings, dear listeners. If you've listened to the show before, welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, I am so happy you're here. I hope this episode finds you all happy and healthy and finding precious moments to venture outdoors and spend time with the birds. Did anyone out there participate in the global big day bird count last weekend? I only had time for a short backyard count. I counted 31 birds total and 14 different species. Those may not sound like big numbers, but spotting 14 different species while sitting in a lawn chair for only 15 minutes is a pretty decent bird count. The species spotted were mostly my resident birds, with a few spring migrant arrivals. To follow up on last week's spring arrivals, I am thrilled to announce the yellow-billed cuckoos are back, as are the Mississippi kites, which are another of my favorite summer nesters here in my area. Remember the Carolina chickadee family I shared about last episode? Well, they're still hanging around, but now add to that a family of tufted titmice. There is a lot of chitter-chatter happening. Twice a day, both families visit the backyard feeders and the bird baths. This week, the adult chickadees are teaching their young about the bird feeders, while the baby tufted titmice are still begging to be fed by their parents. I'm also happy to report that the 2 Carolina wren nestlings that were left after the brown-headed cowbird nestling left have successfully fledged the nest. Knowing that my property is providing nesting areas and habitats to raise the young for quite a few species is such a wonderful feeling. Today is day 4 of 90-degree plus temperatures, and I haven't heard a peep from the cedar waxwings since Monday. I think it may be safe to say that they are finally heading north. In many areas north of here, spring migration is still in progress. But for those of us living on the Gulf Coast, things are slowing down. Most, if not all, the species that overwinter here are gone. And last week's red grosbeak sighting was the last time I spotted a migrant in the yard. Since the rest of North America is still experiencing migration, I wanted to replay a portion of an episode about migration from Season 1. I recorded that episode during fall migration, but there is a lot of good specific information about the migration process and a fun segment on the yellow-billed cuckoo, including my first experiences with the species. Let's tune in to the replay now.
Migration is one of nature's most awesome wonders and one of nature's most complex. The timing, reasons, lengths, and distances vary for the different migrating bird species. For starters, let's define what migration means: the periodic, large-scale movements of populations of animals. And since I live in Texas, I will focus on migration details, mostly for North America. There are sources out there that may say there are several reasons that birds migrate, but for the sake of keeping a complex subject simple for this podcast, we'll discuss the main reasons. According to allaboutbirds.org, there are 2 primary reasons that birds migrate: food source availability and nesting locations. Migration may sound like a drastic measure for us humans, but think about it. For birds and humans, food is a basic need. We must eat to survive. And if our food sources, as humans, diminished considerably, such as the insect populations for birds, we humans would probably develop nomadic or migratory practices. Or shall I say, redevelop nomadic practices. Migration doesn't necessarily follow seasons per se. It's more about the change in weather, wind, precipitation, and temperature that affects the vegetation, and consequently, the loss of vegetation results in the loss of nesting habitats and food sources. By traveling to areas where nesting and food sources are more abundant, the chances for survival are greatly improved. Where it really gets confusing is why some birds migrate and others don't. And the answer is species specific. But if we went through all the species, bird by bird, we'd be here for hours, maybe days. So to break it down a bit more, let's say when it comes to bird migration, there are 4 basic differences. First, there are the permanent residents, which means they remain in the same area and are able to find food sources all year round. For me, that's like, say, the northern cardinal, the tufted titmouse, and the Carolina chickadee. What about your area? What permanent residents do you have that remain in your yard or your area all year round? Then there are the short distance migrators, who will travel short distances, such as making the elevation change from a mountain to lower elevations. Next, we have the medium distance migration, the species that may travel a few hundred miles or so. And then finally, the long-distance migrating species which travel great lengths, spanning from Canada and North America down to Central and South America. Of course, globally, there are many other migrating birds and migratory paths not covered in this episode. Speaking of paths, there are 8 major migratory flyways in the world. In North America, we have 4 major avian superhighways. They are the Pacific Flyway, Central Flyway, which is what I live in, Mississippi Flyway, and the Atlantic Flyway. Here are their approximate borders. The Pacific Flyway is along the Pacific coast from northern Oregon to the California-Mexico border. The Central Flyway is from Canada down to the Texas Gulf Coast and Mexico. The Mississippi Flyway is from the intersection of the Mississippi and Missouri Rivers south towards the Gulf of Mexico. The Atlantic Flyway is down the eastern coast of the U.S. to the tip of Maine, with routes intersecting South Carolina and the Delaware Bay. There's a very super cool map on the allaboutbird.org website showing an animated map of 118 species of migrating birds in the Western Hemisphere. I'll drop a link to the map in the show notes. Now here are some fun facts about migration. While most of bird migration occurs in the spring and fall, birds actually migrate 365 days a year. Birds fly in a V formation to create uplift, allowing them to fly longer distances while using less energy. One of the fastest migrations is the great snipe, which flies over 4,000 miles at a rate of 60 miles per hour. To help birds prepare themselves for the long journey away from home for the winter, they build up body fat. They fuel up with certain foods and reserve up to 50% of their body weight. They basically use their fat for fuel. Part B of this little fun fact is that birds can shrink and enlarge their internal organs, helping them make long-distance flights. Instinctively, migrating birds know where to migrate and how to navigate back home. They use the stars, the sun, and the Earth's magnetism to help find their way. They almost always return home to where they were born. And many, dare I say, most of the migrating birds make their flights by night because the cooler air temperatures allow them to fly further distances without overheating. According to the National Audubon Society's website, the stars and the moon aid night-flying birds' navigation, and the atmosphere is more stable given the temperatures are cooler. The last fun fact leads me to the Lights Out initiative. During both spring and fall migration times, there is a Lights Out initiative for traveling birds. The dates will vary given your area. I'll use Texas as an example. So from August 15th this year through November the 30th, The citizens are encouraged to turn off all non-essential outdoor lighting between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The Texas Audubon website states, during spring and fall migration, nearly 2 billion birds travel through Texas while navigating the night sky. As they pass over big cities on their way, they can become disoriented by bright artificial lights and sky glow, often causing them to collide with buildings or windows. Lights also throw birds off of their migration paths. Some bird fatalities are caused by the amount of energy that the birds waste flying around in circles and calling out in confusion. The exhaustion can also leave them very vulnerable to other urban threats. For this week's All About That Bird segment, I'm featuring one of my all-time favorite birds, mostly because it's about to fly south for the winter, and I am going to miss its hot summer afternoon croaks and coos. Can you guess what it is? Yep, it's that yellow-billed cuckoo. The extremely elusive, slender, medium-sized bird is brown-backed, long striped tail, and as its name states, it has a mostly yellow bill. A common folk name is the rain crow or storm crow, but I'll attest from these past 2 months in Texas, it calls out in rain or shine, and we have had way more shine than we did rain this summer. The yellow-billed cuckoo breeds from southern Canada to Mexico and from California all the way down to the Caribbean islands. Common throughout the southeastern United States, it reaches its maximum abundance in the central states of Oklahoma and Texas. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. For the first 20 years I lived here in rural south central Texas, I thought its croaking call was a frog. Go ahead, laugh, it's funny. And then the first time I ever heard its coo call, I thought it was a sick dove. The first time I ever laid eyes on one was this past May. I thought it was a magpie given its size, shape of its bill, and black and white striped tail. Then I discovered we don't even have magpies here in Texas. Research finally paid off. I did have a rare occurrence this summer with a yellow-billed cuckoo. One came to the tree that I have a feeder hanging in. Although it never went near the feeder, it did hang around the backyard and allowed me to get some very blurry pictures of the very cool bird. By the way, they have a gorgeous gold ring that matches the color of their beak around their blackish eye. According to the Texas Breeding Bird Atlas, many species of cuckoos around the world are brood parasites, meaning that they will lay their eggs in other bird nests for the host parents to incubate and raise. But it is rare for the yellow-billed or black-billed cuckoo to do this. The yellow-billed cuckoo makes a very long journey south to winter over in South America. But given its long breeding season, March through September, the bird doesn't usually head south until its nesting duties are complete. Because of the bird's secretive behavior, and most times disappearing into the treetop foliage, they make for a very difficult study. The bird seems to prefer mature woodlands, groves, orchards, and bottomland forests. They are insect feeders and love themselves some hairy tent caterpillars. They're also known to eat lizards, frogs, eggs of other birds, berries, and small fruits. The National Audubon website says that the survey shows a general decline in the yellow-billed cuckoo's number in recent decades. The species has disappeared from some western areas and is considered endangered in others, with the loss of habitat as its major cause. Some yellow-billed cuckoos amaze wing facts. See what I did there? Amazing and wing word combo. Y'all, these are the kinds of things that run rampant in my brain between episodes. Okay, anyway, here we go. The yellow-billed cuckoo can eat up to 100 hairy caterpillars in one sitting. The stretch between egg laying can be up to 5 days between eggs, meaning that the oldest chick can be close to leaving the nest when the youngest is still hatching. When food is in short supply, the male may remove that youngest bird from this nest. Although, unlike their relative, the greater roadrunner, they do not feed them to the older siblings. The yellow-billed cuckoos have one of the shortest nesting cycles of any bird species. From the start of incubation to fledgling can take as little as 17 days. And although they are born naked, the young birds develop quickly. Within a week of hatching, the chicks are fully feathered and ready to fledge the nest. They're loner birds and typically only pair up for breeding, nesting, and raising the young. In the middle section of the pointed wings, their feathers have this gorgeous burnt sienna coloring. And from my experience, when they fly overhead, you not only see the striped undersides of their long tail, but when they whiz by, you get a flash of that rusty color. Seeing one in early June had me on a hot pursuit for nearly 2 hours. It finally sat perched long enough for me to catch a glimpse through my binoculars. And finally, even though the yellow-billed cuckoo is pretty much a loner bird, if they were to be in a grouping or a flock together, they would be known as an asylum of yellow-billed cuckoos.
I hope you enjoyed the migration replay and my nerding out about the yellow-billed cuckoo. For next week, I'm working on a fun episode where we'll talk about birding on the go. With summer just around the corner, it's the perfect time to talk about birding while on the road and while on vacation. I'm off to visit our daughter in DC this weekend. It is a quick trip, but I am looking forward to doing some local birding at least one of the days that I'm there. I haven't visited in May before, so I'm curious as to what species I'll see. Well, that's it for today. I'll be back next week. Until then, I wish you well and joyful birding, my friends. If you are enjoying the Birding for Joy podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the show. Subscribing and tuning in to the episodes allows the algorithms on the platforms to know that the podcast is providing you worthwhile content and helps ensure the success of the show. Remember, the absolute best way to support your favorite podcast is by word of mouth. So make sure to share Birding for Joy with others who might enjoy listening. That way we can continue to build a joyful birding community. As always, thank you for tuning in, my friends.